Warning, what I am about to tell you could save your muscles from wasting away, and if you are over 60, you need to hear this before you do another stretch. Dorothy, a 68-year-old retired librarian from Ohio, came into my office last month with tears streaming down her face. She grabbed my hand and said, "Dr. Harrison, I have been doing everything right. I stretch every morning like they taught me in that fitness class, but my legs are getting weaker. I can barely climb the stairs to my bedroom anymore. What is happening to me?" What Dorothy did not know, what almost no one knows, is that one specific type of stretch she had been doing religiously every single morning was actually destroying her muscles from the inside out. It is like watering a plant with salt water. You think you are helping, but you are actually killing it. I am Dr. Michael Harrison, and after 32 years of working with patients over 60, I have seen this same heartbreaking pattern hundreds of times. Good people doing what they think is right, following advice that made sense when they were 40, but that becomes dangerous after 60. Before we go any further, I want to be clear about something. While I am a physician sharing evidence-based information, this video is for educational purposes only. It is not a substitute for personalized medical advice from your own doctor, who knows your specific health history. Always consult with your healthcare provider before making any changes to your health regimen. That said, let me share what I have learned. Let me tell you about Robert. Robert was 71 years old, a retired firefighter from Wisconsin. He came to me 6 months ago, and I will never forget what he told me. He said, "Doc, I used to carry people out of burning buildings. Now I cannot even carry my groceries from the car." He was trembling as he spoke, ashamed that this strong man who spent his life saving others could barely stand up from my examination chair without help. Robert had been stretching the same way for 40 years. Every morning he would reach down to touch his toes and hold that position for 30 seconds, just like his old coach taught him back in high school. He would pull his leg behind him and hold it, feeling that deep stretch in his thigh. He thought he was keeping himself limber, staying young. But here is what nobody told Robert. Here is what almost nobody knows. After 60, your muscles are not the same muscles you had at 40. It is like comparing fresh bread to bread that has been sitting out for a few days. The structure has changed, the fibers have changed, and what helps fresh bread, keeping it in a warm, moist environment, actually makes older bread go stale faster. When Robert held those long stack stretches, he was not helping his muscles. He was actually triggering a protective response that was shutting them down. It is like an alarm system that gets stuck in the on position. The alarm is supposed to protect your house, but when it never turns off, it drives everyone away, and the house sits empty. This is the warning that a Japanese doctor, a muscle specialist who has been studying aging for over 40 years, has been trying to share with the world. And when I discovered his research 3 years ago, it changed everything about how I help my patients. But before I tell you what this stretch is, and what you should do instead, let me introduce you to Margaret. Margaret was 64 when she first came to see me. She was a grandmother from Michigan, a woman who had spent her whole life taking care of others. She told me, "Dr. Harrison, I just want to be able to get down on the floor and play with my grandchildren." That too much to ask? She had tears in her eyes as she said it, and I could see her hands shaking. Margaret had been going to a stretching class at her local community center for 2 years. Every week, the instructor would have them hold stretches for 30 to 60 seconds, really pushing into that uncomfortable zone. The instructor meant well. She was following what she had been taught. But what works for a 30-year-old body can be devastating for a 60-year-old body. It is like using the same recipe for baking at sea level and at high altitude. The same ingredients, the same process, completely different results. At high altitude, that cake is going to collapse, and after 60, those long-held stretches are collapsing your muscles. Here is what happens inside your body when you hold a stretch for a long time. Imagine you have a garden hose and someone kinks it really hard. The water stops flowing. Now imagine that hose has tiny little repair workers inside it, and when the water stops, those repair workers cannot get to where they need to go. That is exactly what happens when you hold a static stretch. You are cutting off the blood flow to the very muscles you are trying to help. For a young person, this is not a big deal. Their repair workers are fast and plentiful. They can catch up when the stretch is over. But after 60, you have fewer repair workers, and they move more slowly. It is like having a small maintenance crew trying to take care of a huge building. If you keep shutting off their access to different floors, the building falls into disrepair. This is what the Japanese doctor discovered. He found that when people over 60 held stretches for more than 8 seconds, something alarming happened. The muscles did not just fail to improve, they actually got weaker over the following days. It is like a bank account where deposits turn into withdrawals. You think you are saving, but you are actually spending. Now let me tell you about Harold. Harold was 75, a former mechanic from Pennsylvania who had fixed cars his whole life. He knew how machines worked. He understood systems. And when I explained to him what was happening to his muscles, he looked at me with wide eyes and said, "Doc, I have been sabotaging my own engine for 15 years. Harold had noticed that every time he did his morning stretching routine, he felt more tired for the rest of the day. He thought he was just getting old. He thought this was normal, but it was not normal. His body was spending all its energy trying to repair the damage from those long-held stretches, leaving nothing left for the activities he actually wanted to do. I need to pause here and share something important with you. I am not suggesting you stop stretching altogether. Stretching itself is not the enemy. The problem is the type of stretching and how long you hold it. This distinction is crucial, and it is what separates those who maintain their strength from those who slowly lose it. When I think about all the people out there right now, good people like Dorothy and Robert and Margaret and Harold, doing their stretching routines with the best intentions, it breaks my heart. They are working so hard to stay healthy, and no one has told them that what they are doing is actually making things worse. But here is the good news. Here is what changed everything for my patients. The same Japanese doctor who discovered the problem also discovered the solution, and it is so simple that when I first heard it, I did not believe it could work. I thought there has to be more to it than that. But then I tried it with my patients, and in just 14 days, I started seeing results that I had never seen before. Before I tell you exactly what this solution is, let me share what happened to Helen. Helen was 69 years old, a retired nurse from Indiana who had spent her career helping others heal, but she could not help herself. She told me, "Dr. Harrison, I know the human body. I worked in medicine for 40 years, but I cannot figure out why I am getting weaker no matter what I do." She was frustrated, embarrassed that someone with her medical background could not solve her own problem. Helen had been doing yoga 3 times a week. She loved it. She loved the community, the peaceful music, the feeling of doing something good for her body. But every time she held those warrior poses, every time she sank into a deep lunge and held it for breath after breath, she was triggering that same protective shutdown response in her muscles. It is like trying to fill a bathtub with the drain open. You keep pouring water in, but it keeps flowing out. No matter how much Helen exercised, no matter how consistent she was, she kept losing ground because the very stretches that were supposed to help her were actually draining her muscle strength away. When I explained this to Helen, she looked at me and said something I will never forget. She said, "So all this time, the thing I thought was my medicine was actually my poison." And that is exactly right. For millions of people over 60, their stretching routine has become their poison. Not because stretching is bad, but because the type of stretching they are doing is wrong for their bodies at this stage of life. Now here is what the Japanese doctor found, and this is what changed everything. Instead of holding stretches for 30 seconds or 60 seconds or even 10 seconds, people over 60 should use what he calls pulse stretching. And this is the one thing that makes all the difference. Imagine the difference between wringing out a washcloth and gently squeezing it several times. When you wring it hard and hold it, you can damage the fibers over time. But when you gently squeeze and release, you actually help the fabric stay soft and strong. That is exactly how pulse stretching works. Instead of reaching down to touch your toes and holding for 30 seconds, you reach down, hold for just 2 to 3 seconds, release, then do it again. 2 to 3 seconds, release, 2 to 3 seconds, release. You do this 8 to 10 times. It takes the same amount of total time as one long hold, but the effect on your muscles is completely different. It is like the difference between keeping your hand under cold water for 30 seconds straight versus dipping it in and out 10 times. One leaves you numb and damaged. The other refreshes and invigorates. When Dorothy started using pulse stretching instead of her long holds, she called me after just 10 days. "Dr. Harrison," she said, "I climbed my stairs this morning without holding the railing. I have not done that in 3 years. I could hear her crying on the phone, but these were different tears. These were tears of joy. Here is why pulse stretching works so well for bodies over 60. Remember those repair workers I mentioned, the ones that travel through your blood to fix your muscles. When you pulse stretch, you are actually pumping them into the muscle and then releasing them to do their work. It is like a massage for the inside of your muscles. Pump, repair, pump, repair, pump, repair. But when you hold a long stretch, you are just squeezing those repair workers out and keeping them out. They pile up outside the muscle, waiting to get in, and by the time you release the stretch, many of them have given up and gone somewhere else. It is like showing up. to a store that is closed and waiting for hours. Eventually, you just go home. Let me tell you about someone else who experienced this transformation. Her name was Patricia, and she was 70 years old, a retired school teacher from California who had taught fourth grade for 35 years. Patricia came to me because she was terrified. She told me, Dr. Harrison, I cannot write on a chalkboard anymore. My arm gives out after just a few seconds. She had always been active, always been strong, and watching her body fail her was devastating. Patricia had been following an exercise video designed for seniors. Every morning she would hold her arms out to the side and keep them there for 45 seconds. She would reach behind her back and hold that stretch for a full minute. She thought she was building strength. She did not realize she was actually depleting it. When I explained pulse stretching to Patricia, she was skeptical at first. She said, Dr. Harrison, that seems too easy. How can something so simple make a difference when everything else has failed? I told her what I tell all my patients. Sometimes the most powerful solutions are the simplest ones. We have been taught that harder is better, that longer is better. But for muscles over 60, that just is not true. 3 weeks later, Patricia called me from her daughter's house. She said, Dr. Harrison, I just helped my daughter hang decorations for my grandson's birthday party. I was up on a step stool, reaching above my head for 20 minutes. She was laughing and crying at the same time. That is the sound of someone getting their life back. Let me tell you what happened to Robert, the retired firefighter I mentioned earlier. After I taught him pulse stretching, he came back to see me 3 weeks later. He walked into my office, stood up tall and said, Doc, I carried my groceries from the car yesterday, all of them, in one trip. He had a grin on his face, like a kid who had just won a baseball game. Robert had spent 4 decades as a firefighter, carrying people to safety. He thought those days were over. He thought that version of himself was gone forever, but in just 21 days of pulse stretching, instead of static stretching, he was starting to feel like himself again. Now I want to be clear about exactly how to do this, because the details matter. When you pulse stretch, you are not bouncing. Bouncing is different. Bouncing is jerky and can cause injury. Pulse stretching is smooth and controlled. Think of it like breathing. You do not gasp and hold your breath. You breathe in gently, breathe out gently, over and over again. Pulse stretching should feel the same way. Gentle in, gentle out, over and over again. Here is an example. Let us say you want to stretch the back of your leg. Instead of reaching down and holding for 30 seconds, you reach down gently until you feel a mild stretch. Hold it for just 2 to 3 seconds, then stand back up. Then you reach down again, hold for 2 to 3 seconds, stand back up. You do this 8 to 10 times. The total stretching time is roughly the same as one long hold, but the effect on your muscles is completely different. It is like the difference between watering your garden with a gentle sprinkler versus flooding it with a fire hose. Same amount of water, completely different results. Harold, the mechanic, understood this immediately. He said, Doc, it is like the difference between tapping the gas pedal and flooring it. Same engine, same fuel, but one way wears out the parts and the other way keeps them running smooth. That is exactly right. When you pulse stretch, you are tapping the gas pedal. When you do long static holds, you are flooring it. And after 60, your engine cannot handle flooring it anymore. Let me share another important point that many people miss. The time of day you stretch matters too. When you first wake up in the morning, your muscles have been still for hours. They are cold, stiff, and especially vulnerable. This is actually the worst time to do long static stretches, but it is when most people do them. It is like trying to stretch a rubber band that has been sitting in the freezer. It is more likely to snap. With pulse stretching, you are actually warming up the muscle as you go. Each gentle pulse brings a little more blood flow, a little more warmth, a little more flexibility. By the 8th or 10th repetition, your muscle is ready to move through its full range of motion naturally and safely. Let me tell you about Walter. Walter was 73 years old, a retired postal worker from Ohio who had walked thousands of miles delivering mail over his career. But when he came to see me, he could barely walk to his mailbox and back. He told me, Dr. Harrison, I spent my whole life on my feet. How is it possible that now I cannot even stand up without pain? Walter had been doing the same stretching routine for 20 years. Every morning he would lean against the wall and push his calf into a deep stretch, holding it for a full minute on each side. He thought this was keeping his legs young. He did not know it was actually accelerating their decline. When Walter switched to pulse stretching, his wife called me after 2 weeks. She said, Dr. Harrison, he is walking to the corner store again. He has not done that in over a year. I have my husband back. This is what I want for you. I want you to have yourself back. I want you to do the activities you love without your muscles failing you. I want you to play with your grandchildren, carry your groceries, climb your stairs, walk to the corner store. Whatever it is that brings you joy, I want you to be able to do it. And it starts with this one simple change. Stop holding your stretches for 30 seconds or longer. Start pulsing them instead. 2 to 3 seconds, release. 2 to 3 seconds, release. 8 to 10 repetitions. Margaret, the grandmother who just wanted to play on the floor with her grandchildren, she called me last month. She was crying so hard I could barely understand her at first. Dr. Harrison, she said, I got down on the floor yesterday and played blocks with my grandson for an hour, and then I got back up by myself. I had to take a moment before I could respond, because this is why I do what I do. This is why I get up every morning and come to work. Moments like these, where someone gets back a piece of their life they thought was gone forever. The Japanese doctor who discovered all of this, he has been studying this for decades. He found that people over 60 who switched from static stretching to pulse stretching gained an average of 12% more muscle function in just 30 days. That is the difference between struggling to stand up and standing up easily. That is the difference between needing help and being independent. Here is something else important. When you pulse stretch, you should never push into pain. This is not about seeing how far you can go. It is about gently working with your body, not against it. Think of it like having a conversation with a friend. You do not yell at them. You speak gently. You listen. You respond. That is how you should communicate with your muscles. Helen, the retired nurse, she understood this right away. She told me, Dr. Harrison, all those years I pushed through the pain because I thought it was helping. I was teaching my body to fight against me instead of work with me. She was right. When you force a deep stretch and hold it, your muscles fight back. They tighten up to protect themselves. It is like trying to force open a door that is locked. The harder you push, the more resistance you meet. But when you pulse gently, it is like knocking politely. The door opens on its own. I also want to mention something that many of my patients have asked about. They want to know if they should feel a stretch when they pulse. The answer is yes, but it should be mild. On a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 is the most intense stretch you can imagine, and 1 is nothing at all, you want to be around a 3 or 4 comfortable tension, nothing more. If you are pushing to a 7 or 8, you are defeating the purpose. Your muscle is going to activate its protective response, and you will end up weaker, not stronger. It is like the old saying about catching more flies with honey than vinegar. Your muscles respond better to gentle encouragement than to force. I want you to try something right now. If you are able to, stand up. Reach your arms up toward the ceiling, just until you feel a gentle stretch. Now hold it for 3 seconds and release. Do it again. 3 seconds and release. Do this 10 times. Notice how different that feels compared to reaching up and holding for 30 seconds. Notice how your body responds. That is pulse stretching. That is what your muscles have been waiting for. And I need to tell you about what happened to Dorothy. Remember Dorothy, the retired librarian who came in crying because she could not climb her stairs? I saw her last week. She walked into my office with her granddaughter. Dorothy said, Dr. Harrison, I want you to meet someone. This is Emma. We walked here together from the parking garage, 3 floors of stairs. Emma looked at me and said, Grandma taught me her special stretching. We do it together every morning now. Dorothy had not only gotten her strength back, she was passing this knowledge on to the next generation. She was making sure her granddaughter would not make the same mistakes she had made. This is what I want for you. I want you to feel strong again. I want you to move through your life without your muscles holding you back. And I want you to share this with the people you love so they can avoid the years of unnecessary struggle that so many of my patients went through. Robert is now carrying firewood for his fireplace again, something he thought he would never do. Harold is back in his garage working on his classic car, able to get up and down from under the hood without help. Walter walks to his coffee shop every morning, 2 blocks there and 2 blocks back, rain or shine. Margaret plays with her grandchildren every chance she gets, getting down on the floor and back up again like it is nothing. Patricia is helping decorate for every family event, her arms strong enough to reach and hold and hang for as long as she needs. These are not miracles. These are simply what happens when you stop fighting against your body and start working with it. When you stop using the stretching methods that were designed for 30-year-olds and start using the method that was designed for bodies over 60. Before I go, let me summarize the 3 most important things I want you to remember from everything we have discussed today. First, after 60, your muscles respond differently to stretching than they did when you were younger. Long-held stretches that worked in your 40s can actually cause weakness and damage in your 60s and beyond. Second, pulse stretching. Holding for just 2 to 3 seconds and releasing, done 8 to 10 times, gives your muscles what they actually need. It promotes blood flow, supports repair, and builds strength instead of depleting it. Third, consistency matters more than intensity. A gentle pulse stretching routine done every day will do far more for your muscles than aggressive stretching done occasionally. If you know someone who is struggling with muscle weakness, someone who has been stretching faithfully but getting weaker anyway, please share this with them, because chances are they are doing exactly what Dorothy and Robert and Margaret and Harold and Helen and Walter and Patricia were doing. They are pouring their energy into stretches that are actually making things worse. This information could change their life. It could give them back the independence they thought was gone. It could let them play with their grandchildren again, or walk to the store again, or climb their stairs again. And it all starts with this one simple change. Stop holding your stretches for 30 seconds or longer. Start pulsing them instead. 2 to 3 seconds, release. 2 to 3 seconds, release. 8 to 10 repetitions. Your muscles are waiting. They have been waiting for someone to tell you the truth. They have been waiting for you to stop fighting them and start helping them. And now you know. In just 14 days, you can start feeling the difference. In 3 weeks, you can start doing things you thought were no longer possible. In a month, you can have a new relationship with your body, one built on cooperation instead of conflict. Dorothy told me something last week that I want to leave you with. She said, "Dr. Harrison, I spent 3 years thinking my body was failing me. Now I know I was failing my body. I was giving it the wrong kind of help. The moment I gave it what it actually needed, it started healing itself. Your body wants to heal. Your muscles want to be strong. They are just waiting for you to give them what they need. And what they need, after 60, is not long-held stretches that cut off their blood supply and trigger their protective shutdown. What they need is gentle pulsing movement that feeds them, repairs them, and lets them do what they were designed to do. Remember, this information is meant to educate and empower you, not replace the advice of your personal physician. Take what you have learned today and have a conversation with your doctor about what is right for you. You deserve to feel strong. You deserve to move freely. You deserve to live your life without your muscles holding you back. And now you have the knowledge to make that happen. Remember, 2 to 3 seconds, release. 2 to 3 seconds, release. 8 to 10 times. That is it. That is the change that transformed Dorothy and Robert and Margaret and Harold and Helen and Walter and Patricia. That is the change that can transform you. Start tomorrow morning. Feel the difference within days. Get your strength back within weeks. And know that you are finally, after all this time, working with your body instead of against it. If you found this helpful, I would appreciate it if you shared it with someone you love who needs to hear it. Because somewhere out there right now, someone is doing their morning stretches, thinking they are helping themselves, not knowing that they are making things worse. You could be the one who changes that for them. You could be the one who gives them back their strength, their independence, their life. That is what Dorothy did for her granddaughter Emma. That is what Robert is doing for his wife. That is what you can do for the people you care about. Your muscles are waiting. Your strength is waiting. Your life is waiting. Now you know what to do. Take care of yourself.